Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On Podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another exciting podcast interview. On today's show, we're going to be talking about some of the new breakthroughs that are available to dealers to help their sales and service process, to elevate the customer experience, and to do more with the staff they have today. And joining me is Satyan Merchant. He's the Senior VP of Automotive and Mortgage. Come on, at TransUnion. Let's talk today, Satyan. How's everything going?
Everything is very good here. We're in spring in Chicago. This is a great time. I know we're getting geared up for DMSC and a lot of great industry events, but I'm very excited to be talking to you, Brian.
Well, there's so many things I want to talk to you about and share with our listeners. I'm really excited about the content this year at DMSC because things that I've been writing about for just under 2 years, like identity resolution and customer data platforms, data hygiene, we actually have data now to share. We have a lot more breakthroughs in integration and interoperability. So we're going to tackle some of those right now. The one thing I want to jump to is this idea that dealers are waking up that they have to do something with their first-party data. And I don't think they quite understand what TransUnion can do for the dealers who are seeking to take that step and do more with their first-party data, meaning the cleaning, the hygiene of that once, as what we call a one-time cleanup, the ongoing ability to keep that data clean, and then really identifying their customers who are on their website. So let's talk about the role that you see TransUnion helping to identify who's shopping on their website and then making sure that dealers, marketing, BDC, direct mail, all of the touch points are really using the latest and greatest data. Where do you want to start in your mind when you talk to dealers? Because I'm not sure if they understand TransUnion can really be, I'm going to say, in the center hub of their first-party data strategy.
Yeah, Brian, there's a lot in that question, but let's start really at the consumer, right? At the end of the day, right, the consumer pays the dealer's bills. The consumer pays everyone's bills, right? So the way we think about, and we'll start with identity and that first party data, right? So all industries, not just automotive retail, but all industries that have been on this journey of really getting their arms around the consumer and delivering what I would call relevant experiences to the consumer. Now, at TransUnion, we serve all industries really. And, we have this conversation from, top 10 brands and marketers in the world, the biggest companies you can think of, all the way to small businesses. And I think dealers are much bigger than small businesses in many ways, right? So up and down the spectrum. And you talk about some dealer groups that have 10, 20, 50 stores. They're big businesses, right? So But the problem is the same here around delivering relevant experiences to the consumer. And I think there's a lot that we've talked about in the past and in the industry around the consumer. First of all, there's a proliferation of the type of experience the consumer wants, and that could be online, it could be on their mobile phone, it could be in a computer, it could be at this point through AI, right? Like that's evolving. It could be in a traditional website, it could be on the phone, it could be in person. And so I actually think auto retail is one of the industries that embraces every touch point as well as any, and is really required to embrace, right? Buying a car, we say this all the time, buying a vehicle, it is a very emotional purchase. It's not like buying, a notebook off of Amazon. It's not a commodity. It's a emotional purchase. And so those relevant experiences exist from tip to tail. I think for a dealer, because there are so many touch points, and it's very much a digital transaction to some extent, so much more first-party data is being generated on consumers that a dealership does have access to and lives somewhere in their walls. And part of it, by the way, is a lot of it is that in-person interaction. It's service. It's the previous purchase. It's the years that go through in between, right? And so for us, there's this, when I say this relevant experiences, what goes hand in hand with that is a flight to quality when it comes to consumer data and consumer information. And I think that's where identity comes in, and where TransUnion has really been spending a lot of time solidifying our solutions and our offerings into the market to help our customers, like dealers, get to that, really move to quality on their identification and their first party data. What do I mean by flight to quality? It's, we've gone from a world where I think over time there was a brand or a marketer or a company had less first party data, so they really needed to kind of use things like cookies, use things like other third party sources to build the profile of their consumer, to actually understand who that person is. One of the things, again, you've talked about quite a bit, and we all know in the industry, is the cookie is going away, the third-party cookie is going away. So again, a marketer like a dealership is left to their first-party data. But again, in a retail auto transaction, this is a infrequent but big transaction typically for a consumer.
That's right.
So the data builds over time. That's a good thing. The freshness and the quality of the data, though, can deteriorate over time. For instance, the last time I purchased a vehicle was a number of years ago. My phone number has changed since then. I'm not sure that dealer at a brand where I'm loyal to knows that my phone number has changed. So, and it's quite possible in the next year or two the address will change too, right? And so, the flight to quality is less about, hey, let me just pull in more and more sources and build a big stack of data to find my identity. It's more of, how do we use the data we have, put it together, enrich it in ways that are verified and trusted. What I mean by that, I think that's a unique area where we play, because if you go back to the roots of what TransUnion is, a credit bureau, we're regulated, heavily regulated on the credit side to do really one fundamental job: get identity right. That shows up in credit reports, right? Certainly a lender that wants to make a loan to you, Brian, is not going to pull my credit report and think I am you. So if we don't get that right, we're not in business very long. So historically, TransUnion, our number one job has to be get the consumer right, make sure the file on Brian is the file on Brian, right? So we're now expanding that to the non-credit spaces, right? So, and this is where the identity spine, the identity solution comes in, where it's, hey, a dealership, again, has multiple silos, a CRM, MAP, an ERP, whatever it might be. We may have a lot of different touch points for Brian at the dealership. How do we really put that together, but then also throw out the bad data, right? So back to my personal case, my phone number changed. That's bad data now. It's not third party, it's first party data that a dealership would have. But we at TransUnion, we've got that trusted, relevant, high quality data set to kind of match against or verify against. And so when the identity services of TransUnion are used at a dealership, you can very quickly build a relevant, current, verified identity that's verified against privileged data access we have. Again, some of it at the historic credit bureau that we are, that's privileged. There's only a couple of them out there. There's other there's other data sources we use to build our identity spine that, again, is very hard to get hands on.
And so Satyan, I want to build on this trusted framework, because if you think about it, dealers never had a place to, in a sense, create a sandbox,
right?
To bring all their data together and then partner with you. The DMS wasn't designed for that. The CRM wasn't designed for that. Now, as we embrace these customer data platforms or hybrid customer data platforms, dealers are starting to wake up to say, hey, I can bring my DMS data and my CRM data. I can bring in my call data. I can bring in, but I need to unify it, and then I need to clean. And I just finished a big data hygiene project, which you were involved in, and 40% of the vehicles that were in the DMS no longer are owned by those consumers. Excuse me. And when we looked even further, it was something like 25% didn't have emails. Some of them had, even incorrect emails, meaning they just made, like send me nothing at gmail.com. And then we had, which you just brought up, the bad data, old addresses, old phone numbers. And when we cleaned up and unified data, the principals in the dealer group were just amazed. And they're like, wow, have we been marketing to all this bad stuff? I mean, there's a large dealer group that I think is one of the best operators. I don't work with them, but a friend of mine who does work with them bought cars from them as a kind of, like quid pro quo, but he lives out of state and he still gets service reminders from
It's
the
so
dealer.
funny. Yeah, it's so funny you bring that up.
Crazy. It's crazy what's going on. And so one of the things I want dealers to understand, that a CDP is not designed for the unification and hygiene of data. It's made for the unification of what you give it. But if you give it junk, it will just match on that junk. And so it's really important not to look at TransUnion as, hey, they're my credit bureau, but really as a partner that can say, if you're going to build a CDP, why build it with junk? Let's clean these data silos, bring the data in, unify it. And then using your digital ID, if you want to call it, to be able to identify when those existing customers are back on the website. And I just want to make a key point here, because when we talk about identity resolution, I don't think dealers understand the power. Today, dealers get 20,000, 30,000, 70,000 sessions a month on their website, but they only get 3% of that traffic to submit a lead. There's another 5 to 10% of the traffic on the dealer's website that's existing customers. And with identity, they could know that. Hey, my customer was back on my website, was filling out scheduling a service, never finished it. Or, hey, they were doing a trade. That's the dealer's first party data, but they never could see who that person was. It's their own customer. But TransUnion not only can do the data hygiene, push that data in the CDP, but also connect the online customer journey to known customers. To me, this takes waiting for the up bus or the lead gen tools. It blows that out of the water, because what do you want to retain? Your loyal customers or people who bought from you before? Are you following that, Satya? Because I know in other industries, if somebody leaves a shopping cart, incomplete, they get an email, they get a call. Hey, I see that you were shopping and you didn't purchase. Here's an incentive to purchase. This is not happening in automotive retail.
100. I mean, and a few points here. So I think number one, Brian, you're making an extremely important distinction that I'll just reiterate here. This isn't doesn't have to be for dealers I gotta kind of mortgage the future to kind of get to this space. There's stages here, and there's different steps, and there's some separate distinct things. So one is where you said, right, the data hygiene piece, right? And that, I think almost any dealer today could do that, right? Because it's, again, what first party data do you have? Send it over. And again, using that technology that we've honed for the better part of 5 decades, again, we have to do it anyway. We're regulated to learn in some of our industries. Get that data hygiene, that one-time job, right? And fill in the gaps, enrich the data. Then I think that it plays so nicely the identity spine with the CDPs, which again, you've talked quite a bit on. I think, TransUnion, we're not in the CDP business. We are not a CDP, but I think we're quite complementary and even agnostic to whichever one that a dealer might choose to go with. Then you've got that one-time data hygiene. You've got a good set of records on your most loyal and your existing consumers. Plus, you want to be able to take advantage of all of that first-party activity that you're generating every single day on your website and on the mobile, and maybe via text or wherever else, whatever channels you have, right?
And this is and I want to make a clear distinction. You said it, I didn't. The thousands of data points that are being generated from the website. In the past, dealers have been using their DMS data and their CRM data to even predict, hey, when should I contact a consumer? They were missing that real-time signal, but they could never connect.
Right.
Even great companies that have a predictive analytics and predictive data, like Automotive Masterminds, for example, right? Just as an example. I asked them, hey, where are you getting your signals from? Say, well, we get data from the DMS and the CRM, and we also work with companies like yours. And I said, would you work with me on a dealer group project to now get the data signals, the identity? And they were like, man, that's another whole level, right? Another whole level of signaling, because no matter what predictive model is out there, it doesn't account for spur of the moment changes, accidents, promotions. So what I love is that not only do the data hygiene, but your identity resolution has an individual key and a household key. And those individual and household keys are already matched up into Facebook and Google into their walled gardens. So dealers can match their first party data accurately. They can know when their customers are back on their website. And when they want to activate those people in walled garden marketing channels, the match rate is near perfect. So, I mean, it's an exciting time for dealers who were afraid of cookies going away. But now I think it's just forced dealers to grow up and do what other industries outside of automotive, who have a billion in their handle, or even hundreds of million in their handle, to say, we got to do more with the data that we have. And when they understand it, the business opportunities are amazing.
I mean, and you're right, like kind of coming back to some of the Fortune 100, Fortune 50s, like the conversation about the cookie is we've moved past that, honestly, right? And it's
Right.
It's like, hey, we're sitting on a gold mine. We just have to, again, have a consistent, persistent, reliable identity resolution. Like you said, Brian, I'm glad you mentioned this. The activation points, the endpoints are already kind of built in and they're there. Right. And so then it's a matter of like, what do we want to do with the data that we have? Do we want to invest in really unlocking it? And I was going to say, right, like I think most of us as consumers in other walks of life, in other industries, we know when we feel a good experience, right? Like we know when, there's an airline actually that I use frequently, and they kind of, if I'm halfway through a shopping process on my mobile app, they'll remind me like, hey, the fare is still available just in case, right? Just in case you abandoned in this case. And in that experience, it's a call to action to come back to the website, which in automotive retailing, abandonment sometimes is a call to action to come back to the website, but sometimes the consumer chooses to leave the website experience because, again, as we talked about, what I love about auto retailing is that it's multiple experiences. It's online.
That's right. You're not calling Amazon, but you call the dealer. But Satyan, there's one thing that we're testing, and I can't wait to share in our fall conference at the Modern Retailing Conference. But dealers don't have workflows today for abandoned service schedulers, abandoned trade process, abandoned DR tools, assuming that they're not gated with a form at the beginning.
Sure.
Okay. And consumers hate that. So I hope that goes away. But here's the interesting thing. If somebody's doing a trade and it says, hey, you'll get your trade value in 10 seconds, and they put in everything, and then it says, oh, but in order to get this, you have to give me your phone number and email. If they say no, and they don't fill it out, dealers should know about 70% of the consumers in those scenarios don't give their information. So they only get a small fraction. Now, imagine how many of those people could be existing customers getting that signal into the BDC and saying, look, Joe Blow was on the website, working a trade, give them a courtesy call and see if anything's changed in their mobility. There isn't a dealer I speak to when I tell them, wouldn't you want to know that signal? Or, hey, an existing customer was on your service scheduler and got to a point and stopped. Have they booked a service? No. Shouldn't someone call them? Brian, I'd love that information. Well, it happens because TransUnion identity resolution
Yes.
matched with clean customer data. And then we have to cover this. Unfortunately, fortunately, the number one channel that dealers use to talk and do business is the phone. Unfortunately, dealers are spending a tremendous amount of time chasing leads and customers because consumers don't know who's calling. And, I've been writing about trusted call solutions. I'm super excited about it. It's still evolving, right? AT&T has now started to show the actual logo and the reason for calls, the other networks coming, but we can 100% or near 100% of the time display the dealership name on that outbound call. Yet 9 out of 10 dealers calls are coming up with just a phone number, unknown city, or with a city that may not even be close to where the dealership is. Satyan, why has it taken so long for a unified branded call display platform to be built? Because really, it's amazing, but the fact that Trusted Call Solutions through TransUnion works with all the major carriers now. Was this like a breakthrough recently that the carriers realized how big of a problem this was?
It's a great question, Brian. I'm glad we're talking about this. I'd say that the phone call, as you said, right, in some industries, and really it's in many. Again, I can talk beyond auto, but let's stay with auto retail for a minute here. It's sort of, to me, it was a forgotten channel, right? Web is great, mobile is great. Next step is AI and chatbots, and all of those are going to be enhancing the consumer experience. But when you talk about something personal, and I put a vehicle as a personal type of thing, some people just want to talk to another human being.
That's right.
By the way, I will mention another industry, an industry where this set of solutions, the branded call, really took off, and really created a lot of value, was in the medical space when it came to like reminders for vaccinations or for prescriptions to be filled. Because to
Yes.
me, like, a person's health is similar. It's very emotional. It's very personal, and they want to talk to a human when they're talking about taking medicine, right? So that, just as an aside, there's certain industries where the phone really matters. Talking to another human really matters. And so I think, the key here with the gap that TransUnion filled, to me, is really the notion that um, there's been evolution when it comes to branding and caller ID, but it was usually at the handset level, like at the very endpoint level.
Right.
And what the breakthrough to me is that the outbound caller doesn't control the endpoint, right? If you're a dealer and you're making a phone call to me, you have no idea if I have a smartphone, which carrier I use.
That's
Uh,
right.
is it Samsung or is it an Apple or any of those things? And so the way we looked at the problem was like, it's, branded calls, and I can't wait to talk about this, are really beneficial to the consumer because it creates such a nice experience. My friend Richard was shopping for a vehicle not that long ago. He purchased a nice vehicle recently, but he went through one of sort of the aggregators, and it was like this gated thing where you had to give a phone number. He did give his phone
Yeah.
number.
So it could be TrueCar, Carfax, or
Could be one of
something
those,
where
right?
it was
Edmunds,
important.
whatever it was. And he sent me a screen cap of all the phone calls he got. 5 pages of screen caps. About 10% were identified with a caller ID. And so he told me, I love vehicles. I don't like answering a phone that I don't know who the phone number is, right?
Well, let's
And he said,
pause there 1 second. I want to add, because I want dealers to understand they have so much tied up in their BDCs and so much time tied up in their salespeople making outbound calls. I'll give you two. When I was investigating solar, somebody in the automotive industry said, "Oh, I went to this company." So I went to the company's website. They didn't say they didn't cover Florida, but I put in my information. And then after I put in my information, they said, "Hey, we can't serve Florida, but we'll give your name to some people. Yeah. I'm telling you, within 2 or 3 minutes, my phone started blowing up. Not just blowing up that day, every day. There
Yeah.
wasn't a single call that had any of the companies. It just had lots of calls from cities in Florida.
Right.
Of course, I was after the one or two, I was like, oh, they just gave my number to 12 companies. But how about something more personal? You brought up medical. The other day, my wife and I are having a conversation. I get an annual physical, blood work, and she told me, hey, when you go get your blood work, you tell the doctor the next day you want to call, with, how was the blood work? And it's normally, very good. So day or two goes by. Hey, did the doctor ever call you? I'm like, no, I mean, that's kind of jerky. I asked them to do it. So she calls the doctor and says, hey, I asked you to call my husband. Oh, we called. So
Mm.
I go on my phone in the call log, and it was just a random Boca Raton number. Didn't have the doctor's office, didn't say medical officer, anything. I didn't pick it up. And if I miss calls, I may look in voicemail, but I never listen to voicemail. I'm not just going through random numbers. And it's just amazing how many calls dealers make, whether it's 5,000 a month, 10,000 a month. I mean, we're talking to dealer groups who are doing 30, 40, 50,000 outbound calls a month. And they're not putting the dealership name on the call. I
And I
mean,
and I kind of want to flip this here, Brian. There's because we kind of talked about what can be annoying, like my friend or the doctor's office. This can be a real brand build and real delightful experience type of thing, right? So what we've heard is the use cases are plenty. Think about the service bay, right? Think about when a technician or a service advisor has your truck up on the lift and really needs to talk to you to get approval to get some work done. Now, if you're the consumer, you're out, your truck's up on the lift, you're trying to kill some time or go get some other stuff done, and you want that phone call. And if you see it branded from the service department of your local dealership,
yep.
you're excited for that phone call, right? You want to get your truck back. So we've actually heard from some users that when they called and it was branded, the consumer, the owner of the vehicle picked up and said, "Oh, hey Jimmy, thanks for calling me back." Right?
Yes,
That
yes.
is a wonderful experience for the consumer. And by the way, the GM is going to love that. The quicker you can get that truck, the service done, down off the lift, out the garage, and get the
Yes.
next one up, that is fixed ops revenue, fixed off profitability.
That's right. And
And it,
today, with the solution in place from TransUnion, the dealership name with the verified green check mark, that's standard on all major carriers. Now rolling out AT&T and later or soon coming, the other two major carriers can be a logo, a graphic logo with a reason for the call. And these are exciting times because today, more than ever, the research, even your recent research that you did showed the dealers who get the consumer in a conversation first win the appointment and most times win the sale. We've always had race to the clock, or beat the clock because OEMs have this process where, hey, when a lead comes in, you follow up. But no one was talking about the fact that the phone calls weren't being picked up. In fact, in the CXO network, group of larger dealer groups that I coordinate with, 13 to 17% seem to be the range of outbound call pickup. I mean, think about that. Service, you just brought this up. What about recalls when the dealer's trying to call
right.
consumers about an open recall? What about cars that are in high demand that a consumer wanted to know about, but there's multiple people who want the car? I mean, dealers want to do the right thing and honor, hey, I'll call you as soon as whatever happens. But they also have to understand that 9 out of 10 people won't pick up the phone if they don't recognize the number. And consumers aren't putting in the 42 possible outbound lines that your dealership has. And so, you mentioned the delight. Bowen Scarf Ford is one of the dealers that I know who turned on Trusted Call Solutions, and he didn't tell their BDC, and the BDC was like, "This is weird, man. People are picking up the phone and knowing it's me." And he chuckled and said, "Yeah, that's because we have branded call display turned on." And if you think about it, just as TransUnion helps dealers do more with their first party data to identify the actions or changes within their customer profile, really on the other side, when it comes to activation, CDPs are great for marketing activation, but it's just not marketing, it's communication. It could be that email, your clean data gets more emails delivered. Your clean address gets more direct mail pieces delivered. The appending of the phone number or alternate phone numbers or replacing bad with good gives the dealer more opportunities to call. But in this call thing, there's so much spam, there's so much spoofing, there's so many junk calls. People have grown really tired. And this is like that little like magic pump up. Could you imagine talking to twice as many people per hour because they know who's calling? I mean, you now are responsible even in mortgage. I think that's super important, right? People apply for a mortgage, they maybe go on Lending Tree, though, and I've done this before, and they give your number to 3 or 4 banks and they're all calling. They all come in as some unknown number. I'd have to imagine that something like mortgage and lending, healthcare, things that are very critical and time sensitive, branded call display and the caller name optimization to keep these lines off of spam tags seems to be a no-brainer. What else, what are you hearing in the field outside of automotive?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I just came off of a call right before this conversation, Brian, with an advisory board of about a dozen of our top partners in the mortgage space. And 2 of them mentioned really to each other unprompted that they turned this service on within the last year. And it was on the servicing side for the loan operations, right? And they said, 30 to 50% lift in terms of answers. And most importantly, particularly if it was in a like a collections stage of a loan, it was that sort of lift in terms of payments. Now, the really interesting part when we talk about financial services, and I think this can be true in automotive as well, is, for number one, the branding on the phone call to get the other end, the consumer to respond, right? That's kind of the primary use case. What we hear a lot, again, in collections, but this could also be in retail, is the call to action, just the fact that the logo popped up and the consumer didn't answer the phone, but it was that subtle reminder that, oh, I've got to take one more action. So in the case of banking and lending, it's, oh, let me go online and make that payment that I'm a day late on.
I
right?
love that. I love that. Yeah.
So the
Or it
metric
could
isn't
be,
even.
hey, the dealer did call me back. I'm in a meeting.
Yep.
And I'm going to call them. So it may not, you're absolutely right. It could just be a better brand experience because when they submitted a lead on the dealer's website and think the dealer never called them, it could be, oh, the dealer called them, I'm in dinner or I'm in a meeting, but I love the fact the dealer called me back. Maybe it's something like that as well in automotive.
Absolutely. I mean, it could be for automotive, like ultimately finishing out a credit application or a form that you might have abandoned, right? Or again, that's kind of the similar case in the finance side where it's, oh yeah, I actually don't really need to speak to anyone. I know why they're calling. I see their logo. That's right. I got to go online and make the payment. Or I have to submit a document back to the dealership. They want to verify digitally my driver's license, right? Or whatever it might be, right? So it's a very subtle and also consumer friendly reminder. It's not intrusive in that way. So that's an example of what we're hearing in some of the other businesses and the other verticals of kind of the efficacy. And so we like to say, hey, it's phones answered is not even necessarily the metric. It's actions taken is the metric, right?
Ooh.
So again.
Yep.
Again,
I'll give you another example. I mean, I'm on fire with examples. I just thought of this. we have a credit line for the business. Every year, the bank asks us to resubmit financials, to renew the credit line, right? So we did all that, and there was this number, and I normally don't pick up, but it was from New Jersey, and I grew up in New Jersey, and it was from the area where I used to live, and I was like, Well, that was the local bank that we used to do the credit line. I picked it up. It's like, oh, Mr. Pash, this is, Colleen from blah, blah, blah bank. And I'm like, okay. Because I had no idea, that my CFO, she goes, oh, you've been approved, for your renewal credit line, but you're going to have to come in and sign some papers. Okay. The call ended. It was fine. And I was like, man, I'm glad that I picked up that call. But here's another example where it wasn't collections, but actually like important banking. What about fraud or other things or concerns or adverse impact of something that's happening or whatever? You could say, well, people text today. Yeah, okay. But how many weird texts have you gotten, lately?
What's really interesting on the bank, and this is another one I'd like to share, is it's sort of the tie that, or the disconnect, and I think this is again true in automotive as well. In the banking world, there's lots of mergers and acquisitions, and one bank buys another. And so we've had some banks very pleased with the service on is, a big merger. It happened in the South in the last couple of years, where after a huge M&A multi-billion-dollar deal, the new bank changed its name and have been very invested billions of dollars in their new name brand, which is wonderful, right? We see the ads on TV. Yeah. We see them at baseball stadiums. There's a baseball stadium named after, all of that high level brand exposure. The part that got missed until they talked to us was the employees, the bankers at the bank that got acquired, their phone actually did have branding, but with the old bank's name pre-merger. So then what happens? They're the ones interacting with the consumers. They're the ones making the phone calls, and it's still, old name, which corporate has spent billions of dollars to get rid of that old name, but that old name is showing up on your phone every time they call you, right? So using the service to make sure you manage that. Again, this is point of outbound, not
well, listen, there's a lot of mergers going on in automotive retail. I didn't even think of that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Right. Because, so we know what's going on with the dealer groups, right? We know exactly what's going on with the M&A and the dealer groups. The same sort of scenario is, I'm sure, occurring right now. How much money is being spent on M&A and acquisitions in the dealer group? You want to carry that. Part of the reason you do that is to leverage that brand of the dealer group, right? But if you've got the old name.
And I want to add one other thing that we've learned about working, the last year with Trusted Call Solutions, writing about it, getting dealers turned on, is there's a big difference within dealers on how many outbound calls per line are happening. Now, some dealers have a lot of lines with low volume per line, which kind of keeps them generally off spam or telemarketing. But there are some dealers that are pumping a lot of calls through a very few numbers. And they're saying, Brian, man, we're getting spam tagged a lot. And dealers should know that as part of the Trusted Call Solutions onboarding is how many outbound lines, how many calls, looking for some potential problems. But then the caller name optimization piece, because Trusted Call Solutions is branded call display and caller name optimization, is that 24/7 monitoring every outbound line stays off of spam or telemarketing flags. And then if it's happening a lot, to give you coaching on how to stop that from happening. But believe me, dealers know this is happening, but they've been doing a manual Band-Aid. And to be able to do this across all carriers 24/7 as an automated service is absolutely wonderful. Satya, when I think of TransUnion's opportunities for the year ahead, it almost, it's like this digitization of consumer data, the ability to now manage that data as cookies gone away. That was the lazy marketing, kind of spray and pray, nothing personalized. The fact that we can do personalized messaging, personalized marketing, better targeting, all through first-party data management. At a time when dealers more than ever need to move inventory and their best opportunities are with their existing customers who've already had a great experience, it seems like all roads are leading to TransUnion. It must be an exciting time for your team to be launching enhancements to CDP platforms, data hygiene for any dealer, trusted call solutions to help them on their outbound calls, and then knowing that all their marketing becomes more efficient, waste is reduced. I mean, what dealer wouldn't want these type of services, right?
Yeah, and I think I appreciate that, Brian. I mean, I believe that we're very well positioned, and a lot of it starts with the way we approach the industry. And I like to say this, right? Some of the top people on my team have only lived in automotive retail in their entire life. Like they haven't always worked at TU, but all they've worked in the automotive retail. So to me, it starts with like put yourself in the shoes of a GM or an employee at a dealership. And I would even invite a principal, a GM, a chief operating officer to just walk around and notice what your staff does and notice how they interact with your consumers, right? You certainly have staff that is doing marketing and BDC and outbound. You have an internet sales team, but you also have a service bay. You have obviously your sales reps. You have your F&I office, and that person makes a ton of phone calls throughout the day. They might be calling their lender partners. They might be calling the consumer. They might be calling the DMV, right? And so that's how we started to think about this is like, what are the business drivers, right? And where is the profitability for a dealership? Where does it come from? Where can you make that more efficient? What are the needs there? Where's the wasteful spending? Where's kind of the wasteful marketing? Like you said, spray and pray, right? And I think the first level of waste is just too many emails sent out or too many mail pieces. But the real waste is trying to pursue leads that aren't really leads. Like that's where a lot of time, I mean,
Come on. Yeah.
time and labor is the biggest expense, right? And so we're just looking at the business problems and then looking at what we have, like what solutions. Again, I talked about TransUnion has better than 5 decades of history knowing who consumers are. That's kind of when I explained to my grandmother what we do, I said we kind of know who consumers are and like share information about them to help them kind of better their lives. I mean, that truly is what we do, right? So
Right.
we're just applying that now in the automotive retail space.
Love it. Love it. Well, we're really excited to have you as part of the sponsors of dealer education at the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference. That's June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in Austin. I mean, this is the conference. It's the Davos of automotive technology and marketing, where we're going to be diving into the latest in first-party data management, which is the identity, which is data hygiene, which is activation, marketing automation. We're talking about the role of GA4. I mean, this is the meat and the mechanics of modern retail operations. You're not going to find this concentrated, deep information anywhere else. So I want to encourage the dealers who are listening, get someone from your team out there to meet with the leaders, to meet with the dealers who are using these technologies, get exposed to new solutions to solve your current problems, because what worked 4 years ago or 6 years ago isn't going to work in these environment. And even if they did provide some incremental lift, your competitors are embracing first-party data management, which is going to help them increase market share, increase retention and lifetime value, reduce their marketing, and create, as Satya said multiple times, a more enjoyable customer experience, elevating the retail experience. Satya, if dealers wanted more information, obviously they can contact TransUnion directly. At the Patch Group website, we have a page for Trusted Call Solutions and the DMS free DMS data hygiene audit. But is there a page on the website for the automotive team? Is it like TransUnion/auto, or what can dealers do who want to maybe just contact you directly? What's the best way for them to get engaged with the automotive team?
So a number of ways. I think we could go, you could always just Google it or search it, but you could also go to www.transunion.com /automotive. And you can always send me an email. It's satyan.merchant@transunion.com.
That's a
Happy to,
valuable email address. So dealers,
that's
write
right.
that down. It's just his name at transunion.com. Come on.
That's right.
I love it. Love it. Well, we're looking forward to sharing some of the results from the Trusted Call Solutions that we've already had in place. We have a big data story to tell on CDPs. So it is going to be a celebration of the next gen technology that's going to help dealers improve their retail process, both in sales and service. So this is the time to come down to Austin. And if this is the first time you're listening to a podcast interview, you should know that there are dozens of interviews. You can just search the Brian Pash podcast. And this is part of the series on the road to DMSC. So TransUnion and their team will be there to answer questions, to show solutions, and to really just develop a relationship of where your current business needs are. So make sure you stop by and talk with their team. Satyan, thanks so much for taking time today. This is truly kind of a renaissance for TransUnion in automotive, and I couldn't be happier because I'm seeing what you're doing for my shared clients, and it's really changing outcomes like never before.
It's wonderful to hear. Thanks, Brian. Again, wonderful partnership with you, and we look forward to seeing you and everyone else at DMSC.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap things up. So go to digitalmarketingstrategies.org to get your tickets, book your hotel. And of course, you can go to transunion.com/automotive to see all of the products and solutions TransUnion have. If you'd like to get a free DMS data hygiene audit, free, you can go to pashgroup.com and pull down that. If you want to get a quote for Trusted Call Solutions, you can go to pashgroup.com. There's TransUnion Trusted Call Solutions page. Any way you want, or just come down to DMSC and we'll show things live to you. That's all for today, Satyan. Thank you. And thank everyone who's listening in. Share this podcast with your colleagues because we're talking about the things that will move the needle, not only this year, but in years to come. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.